I found the pillow flipped the wrong way. That's how it started. Eric always left the bed a mess. I was the one who smoothed the sheets every morning before leaving for work, folded the corners, straightened the pillows. I had a routine, and that day, something was off. Two of the pillows, mine and his, were flipped, the open ends facing inward. I always turned them outward. Always. I stood there staring at them longer than I should have. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. It wasn't fear. It was the beginning of recognition, the kind that settles in quietly and never lets go. My name is Lauren Whitaker. I was 30 years old when the illusion shattered. Married for 6 years to Eric. We met in college. Me, a scholarship girl with a planner and a dorm closet full of black coffee and ambition. Him, the charming boy in the business program who always had time for a joke. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was safe, slow-burning, and solid. We built a life. We talked about kids. We argued about dish towels and politics. We paid off a car loan. We were fine. Or so I thought. The cracks began 8 months ago when my younger sister, Haley, moved back to Lexington. She'd been in Florida for almost a decade, ballet scholarships, a string of boyfriends, and what she called a life with sunshine and better wine. Then, suddenly, she was back, heartbroken, broke, and newly single after her long-term partner, some guy none of us ever really got to know, left her. According to her, he was gay and had cheated on her with men. I found that hard to believe, not because I knew him well, but because the entire story sounded rehearsed. Still, I said nothing. Haley had always lived in a world where reality bent for her convenience. It had always been that way. When she came home, she moved in with our parents, Carol and Richard. Within a month, she was struggling to find work, and I made a mistake I'll regret forever. I asked Eric if he could help. He was in a hiring position at his company, and I figured he might have an opening. He did. And just like that, Haley was working 2 floors down from him, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Growing up, Haley and I weren't close. She was the favorite, though my parents would never admit it. I got a used Chevy Cobalt for my 16th birthday. She got a nearly new Eclipse with a red bow. I saved up for basketball camp at the local college. She flew to national dance competitions on my dad's credit card. When I came home 15 minutes, past curfew at 17, I lost my car keys for a month. When she came home smelling like weed at 18, my mom made her hot chocolate and said, "Honey, let's talk." But I'd grown up, moved on, and tried to believe we could start fresh. When Haley started dropping by my house more often, just to hang, she said, I convinced myself it was progress. Maybe this was the sisterhood I never had. Then I noticed things. She and Eric talked. Not just surface talk, but real, in-depth conversations. They had inside jokes I didn't understand. Shared glances I wasn't part of. When I walked in on them mid-laugh, they'd go quiet. When I tried to join, Eric would say, "It's just a work thing." Still, I said nothing. I loved him. I trusted her. But the bed that day, the way the pillows were turned, it gnawed at me. We had different schedules. Eric worked early. I worked late. That day, Haley had been over, waiting for us to eat dinner together. Nothing unusual, nothing obvious. Just that small, silent wrongness. A pillow facing the wrong direction. And a voice inside me whispering something I didn't want to believe. You're sleeping beside a man who's already let someone else lie in your place. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to believe it was nothing. Just a pillow, just paranoia, just exhaustion playing tricks on me. But that night, lying next to Eric, I could feel the weight of something unsaid pressing down on my chest. He was asleep within minutes. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it click with each rotation like a clock counting down to something inevitable. The next few weeks, I watched them carefully, not obsessively, quietly. Haley started coming over more often. She'd swing by after work with takeout or some excuse to drop off files. She laughed harder at Eric's jokes than I ever had. He started texting more, always with his screen tilted slightly away. I'd ask what he was laughing at. He'd say it was a meme from a coworker. Always vague, always just beyond reach. One Thursday evening, I came home and found her barefoot in my kitchen. Eric was cooking. Haley was leaning on the counter, sipping wine from my favorite glass. She didn't even flinch when I walked in, just smiled as if this was her place too. When I asked how long she'd been there, she said, "Oh, I came straight from work. We were brainstorming that new pitch. You know the one." She looked at Eric, and he nodded like they shared some unspoken joke. I stood there, coat still on, keys in my hand, heart sinking, and they just kept laughing. After she left that night, I asked Eric directly, "Do you think you and Haley are getting too close?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, she's here all the time. You two talk more than we do." He chuckled like I was being dramatic. "She's your sister. She's been through a lot. I'm just being nice." Nice. That word felt like glass in my mouth. I didn't push it further. I nodded, kissed him goodnight, and turned away when the lights went out. But something inside me had shifted. I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. Couldn't unknow what I knew. 2 weeks later, we had dinner at my parents' place. Everyone was pretending like nothing had changed, like we were still one big, happy family. But I watched closely. I saw the way Haley's hand brushed Eric's arm as he passed behind her, the way she leaned in and whispered something, the way they touched foreheads, for a moment so brief it could have been a trick of the light. But I saw it, and more importantly, she knew I saw it, because when she pulled away, she looked straight at me, smiled like she owned the room, and went back to her plate. I didn't say a word. That night, I stood in the shower longer than usual, hoping the hot water could melt the confusion out of my body. It didn't. Instead, I planned something. A weekend getaway. Just me and Eric. I needed to know. I needed to look him in the eye without anyone around and ask him flat out. I booked a cabin in Louisville, something quiet and cozy. I didn't tell him the real reason. I just said I missed us. Friday night was perfect. We had dinner. We danced. We made love. He held me afterward, whispered he loved me. And for a few minutes, I wanted to believe it again. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Saturday morning, while he was tying his shoes, I asked him, "Eric, are you sleeping with my sister?" The silence was immediate, heavy. He didn't look up, just stopped, frozen, one hand still gripping the laces. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. Yes. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't denied. It was soft, honest, like a confession at the altar of a marriage he'd already burned. I couldn't breathe. My vision tunneled, ears ringing, heart pounding. I whispered, "In our bed." He turned his face away. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just picked up my purse, walked to the car, and drove away. I left him standing there with a suitcase half packed and our life halfway dead. I didn't look back because some betrayals are so deep they turn the person you loved into someone you no longer recognize. Eric came home a few hours later. I heard the sound of the front door creak open and close, soft like a child trying not to wake a parent. I didn't come out of the bedroom. I sat in silence, knees drawn to my chest, staring at a framed photo of us on the nightstand, the one from our honeymoon in Asheville. We looked so happy, sunburnt and stupid. I should have burned it right then, but I didn't. I just flipped it face down. He knocked gently on the door, then cracked it open. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have words, but because none of them would have made a difference. Some things don't need to be said. Some people don't deserve the privilege of hearing how badly they've hurt you. He packed a bag. I watched him through the doorway, half hidden behind the frame. His movements were slow, like even he didn't believe this was real. He took the blue hoodie I bought him last Christmas, the one he said felt like a hug. I guess he thought he'd need comfort. That night, he checked into a hotel. I changed the locks the next morning. Then I called my parents. I thought they'd be angry, shocked. I expected tears, maybe yelling. What I didn't expect was apathy. My mother's voice was calm. "I'm sorry this happened, honey," she said. "It shouldn't have happened this way, but Haley deserves to be happy too." I froze. "Excuse me," I asked. "You and Eric, you've been having issues for a while now," she continued. "Maybe this is just the way it was supposed to fall apart." She said it like she was discussing a weather forecast. I told her what Haley had posted, a photo of her and Eric with him kissing her cheek and the caption, "Feeling loved." She tagged me. My mom let out a tired sigh. "Well, you shouldn't be on those apps anyway." I didn't even have the energy to scream. My voice came out flat. "She slept with my husband, Mom. Your daughter slept with my husband." There was silence on the line, then a light clink like she was stirring sugar into tea. "Things happen, Lauren. People make mistakes." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was insane. I asked to speak to Dad. She handed over the phone. I told him everything. He didn't ask questions. He didn't react. He simply said, "I agree with your mother." That was it. That night, I blocked them both. Phone, email, Facebook, Instagram, Venmo. Every line of access they had to me, I shut it down. I began packing my things. I didn't want anything that reminded me of them. The photo albums, the birthday cards, the books they'd inscribed. I boxed them up, drove to the edge of town, and dropped them at a donation center. I didn't need evidence of a family that never really saw me. The house, our house, was legally shared, but I wasn't about to wait around for another betrayal. I hired a lawyer. Eric said at first that I could just take the house and the savings. Guilt made him generous. But 2 days later, he called and said, "We'll need to split everything fairly." He said it like a businessman. I didn't answer. I'd already drained our joint savings into a private account before he could. My lawyer confirmed everything was clean. A week later, Haley officially moved in with him. She sent me a text. "No hard feelings, sis. You'll meet your soulmate too someday." I didn't reply. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I blocked her and the ghost of the sister I thought I had. 3 weeks later, I sold the house. I packed what was mine, left behind everything that wasn't, and drove north. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my parents. Not mutual friends. Not even the cousins I used to be close with. Some people disappear quietly. I left like thunder. No goodbye, no warning, no pieces of me left behind. Minneapolis didn't feel like home at first. It felt like escape. Cold wind, unfamiliar roads, and strangers who didn't know my name. But maybe that's what I needed, blank space. A place where no one looked at me with pity. No one whispered behind my back. No one saw her when they looked at me. I found a small apartment above a bakery, just enough space for me and the silence. I started therapy. Twice a week, I sat in a worn leather chair and peeled back the layers of what Haley and Eric had left behind. Trust issues, nightmares, a rage I didn't know I was capable of. But I kept going, even on the days I hated every second of it, especially on those days. For a while, I tried dating. The first man I went out with was decent enough. Clean shirt, polite, talked about his dog too much, but halfway through dinner, he said, "You seem like the kind of woman who's been through something." That was the last first date I went on for nearly a year. I threw myself into work. I freelanced from home, copywriting, editing, whatever I could find. It was lonely but safe, controlled. My world was small, quiet, and mine. Then, one snowy Thursday afternoon, I wandered into a restaurant called River and Ember. I hadn't eaten all day and just needed something warm. What I didn't expect was Nathan. He was behind the counter in a flour-dusted apron, sleeves rolled, focused on a pan of sizzling garlic shrimp. He looked up, offered a quick smile, and said, "We don't serve food this pretty to people who look that tired. Sit. I'm making you something." I almost walked out, but something about him, his ease, his lack of questions, made me stay. That was the beginning. Nathan Collins was the opposite of Eric in every way that mattered. Where Eric was charming, Nathan was genuine. Where Eric performed, Nathan showed up. He didn't ask about my past until I was ready to tell it. And when I did, he didn't flinch. "I've made worse decisions," he said gently, "like letting my brother pick the tile for this floor." Then he pointed down at the ugliest checkered pattern I'd ever seen and made me laugh for the first time in months. Nathan and his twin brother Eli ran the restaurant together. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. Warm light, worn wood, good music. I started helping out a few nights a week, organizing menus, running social accounts, occasionally bussing tables when it was busy. I hadn't realized how much I missed being part of something until I was. A year later, Nathan proposed. No theatrics, just a note on my coffee cup that read, "Wanna be my forever?" and a ring tucked inside the sugar jar. I said yes before I could cry. We weren't in a rush, so we took our time. Bought a house just outside the city. Adopted a senior rescue dog named Murphy, who snored louder than the furnace. Talked about kids, not in the dreamy way I once had, but in the honest, practical, let's build a future way that people who've lost everything tend to do. I was happy. Not the kind of happy that comes from perfection, the kind that grows in the cracks, the kind you fight for. Then one morning, I checked my mailbox and found a white envelope addressed in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. Inside was a wedding invitation. Haley and Eric. I stared at the card for a full minute before I noticed the photo tucked inside. Sunflowers, golden hour, Haley in white, Eric kissing her cheek like he was proud of the wreckage they'd built their love on. There was also a letter from my parents. "We hope you'll forgive and join us in putting the past behind us. Haley would love for you to be a bridesmaid, just like she was for you." My hand shook, not from sadness, from disbelief. That night, I threw the invitation into the fireplace and watched every petal, every promise, every lie turn to ash. I thought that would be the end of it. I burned the invitation. I blocked the number. I deleted the email. I even called my therapist and told her I was proud of how calm I'd been. I told Nathan too that night. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just pulled me into his chest and whispered, "They don't exist here." And they didn't. Not in our home. Not in our life. But 2 weeks later, they showed up anyway. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The snow was just beginning to melt, revealing the muddy scars of a long winter. I came home from running errands and found a man standing in front of my apartment building, hands in his coat pockets, waiting. Eric. He looked good. Too good. Like he'd tried to scrub off the last 4 years and wear a new version of himself. Hair styled, coat clean, that old hesitant smile on his face like he thought it still had power. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just walked past him, keyed the front door, and said, "You've got 30 seconds. Use them wisely." He followed me inside. "I just wanted to talk," he said. "I know I have no right to show up, but I wanted to say I'm sorry." I didn't speak, just stared. He kept going. "Haley and I, we're getting divorced," he said, like it might earn him sympathy. "She cheated on me. Multiple times. Married men. Guys from her gym. Even tried to sleep with Eli, I think." I raised an eyebrow. Surprised? He looked down. "No, I guess not." There was silence. Thick, awkward. Then he said it, the real reason he was there. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Lauren. I don't. I just thought maybe we could have closure. For both of us." I tilted my head. "Closure?" I repeated, "You want closure?" He nodded, hopeful. I stepped closer. "Eric, do you really think the woman you betrayed, whose sister you slept with, whose entire family you helped destroy, owes you closure?" He looked away again. I let the silence stretch. Then I said it, slowly, clearly, so there was no room for misunderstanding. "You made your bed. Now sleep in it, alone. You don't get closure. You don't get peace. You get exactly what you gave me. Silence and a locked door." I opened the front door and gestured outward. Get out. He hesitated, like maybe he thought I was bluffing, like maybe I'd break. But I didn't. I stood there, stone still, and waited. He left, but it didn't end there. The next night, I went to River and Ember as I always did. Nathan was managing, and I liked to sit in the back corner with my laptop, sipping tea, and watching him work. It was slow, quiet, comfortable, until Eric walked in. He made a beeline for my table like he belonged there, sat down across from me like it was normal. Nathan saw him first. He walked over fast, calm but firm. Is this guy bothering you? I looked up at Eric, then at Nathan. Not yet, I said, but he's about to. Eric tried to smile. I just wanted to talk. Just a few questions. Nathan didn't move, didn't blink. He just said, "You've got 2 minutes. After that, I throw you out myself." Eric leaned forward. I stayed with Haley for another year just to hide money, he said. I sold assets, protected what I could. When we finally divorced, she barely got anything. She moved back in with your parents. I blinked. She's back in Lexington. I asked. He nodded, sheepish. Living with your mom, probably using her for rent. I let the words settle. Then I smiled. Thank you, I said, standing. That's all I wanted to hear. Eric looked confused. Wait, that's it. I turned to Nathan. He's done. Nathan didn't hesitate. Out. Now. Eric tried to protest, but suddenly 2 waitstaff were standing behind him, broad-shouldered cousins of Nathan, arms crossed, eyes cold. Eric stood, muttering something under his breath, and walked out into the cold. Nathan sat down beside me, silent for a moment. Then he said, "You okay?" I nodded. I didn't need revenge, I whispered. I just needed to know she ended up exactly where she belongs. I thought that would be the last time I'd ever hear their names. I had everything I needed, a good man, a peaceful life, and the truth that my sister had lost everything she'd stolen. But peace, it seems, makes you forget that some people never learn to stay gone. It started with messages. First, a blocked number left a voicemail. Then, a Facebook friend request from an account with no profile picture. Then an email, subject line, "Please read." I didn't. I deleted everything. But they kept coming. Dozens from different accounts, all variations of the same plea. Please contact us. It's important. It's about Haley. I ignored them until one message made my hands tremble. It was from my mother. She didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was. She just wrote, "Haley is very sick. Her kidneys are failing. She needs a transplant. You're her best hope." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the laptop and walked out into the cold, letting the air burn against my skin. It was late, the streets quiet. I stood under a streetlight for what felt like hours, watching the snow fall like ash from an old fire I thought I'd already put out. That night, I told Nathan. He didn't interrupt, just listened, jaw tight, hand firm around mine. Finally, he said, "What do you want to do?" "I want to see if I'm a match," I said softly. "Not because I want to help her. Because I want to look her in the eyes and let her know I could, and I won't." He nodded. "Then I'll be waiting at the airport." A week later, I flew back to Kentucky. First time in years. The air smelled the same. The streets felt smaller. The people looked older. I didn't tell anyone I was coming, not even my parents. I went straight to the clinic and did the tests. 2 days later, I got the results. Perfect match. Of course I was. They called me overjoyed. Said Haley was being admitted for monitoring and they'd schedule the surgery once I was ready. I said I'd like to meet with the family and the doctors together to discuss next steps. The room was pale and sterile, filled with that anxious energy hospitals never managed to mask. Haley was in bed, pale and thinner than I remembered, but still wearing mascara. My mother sat beside her, eyes red but dry. My father stood in the corner, arms folded like a statue carved from old guilt. The doctor began, listing the procedure, risks, recovery, benefits. Every sentence ended in hope. And then it was my turn. I walked up to Haley's bedside. She looked up, eyes glossy. "Lauren," she whispered, "I'm so sorry for everything. Please, I need you." I took her hand. Warm, small, shaking. "Did you hear the doctor?" I said softly, "I'm your best shot, probably your only one." She nodded, tears falling now. I leaned closer, dropped my voice to a whisper. "Then I hope you're at peace with dying." Gasps filled the room. I stood up, released her hand like it was poison. "You took my husband, my home, my dignity, and now you want a piece of my body too." I turned to my parents. "You stood by her, watched her tear me apart, told me she deserved to be happy." My mother tried to speak. I cut her off. "If I had $1 to my name, I would spend it to make sure your ashes are flushed down the filthiest gas station toilet I can find. And that would still be more mercy than you ever showed me." The doctor stood frozen. The nurse covered her mouth. No one moved. I walked to the door, turned one last time, and said the only truth that mattered. "I could have saved you, and that's exactly why I won't." Then I left. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. Because for the first time in my life, I knew what it meant to choose myself. I didn't cry on the flight home. Not once. I stared out the window as the clouds broke open beneath us, soft and white and indifferent. The woman next to me offered a tissue. I smiled and said, "Thank you, but I'm okay." And for the first time in years, I meant it. Nathan was waiting at the gate when I landed. No flowers, no speech. Just open arms and that steady warmth that always said, "You're safe now." I buried my face into his chest and let the last remnants of Kentucky fall away. We drove home in silence, his hand on my knee the whole ride. When we pulled into our driveway, Murphy barked from the window, tail thumping wildly behind the glass. I laughed, really laughed, and felt something in my chest unlock. The next morning, I woke up before the kids. The house was still, golden light spilling in through the curtains. I stood in the kitchen with a mug of coffee, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, the faint creak of wood under my bare feet. I didn't miss them. Not my parents. Not Haley. Not even the version of myself who used to beg for scraps of love from people who never deserved her. They'd reached out again. A letter this time. No return address. Just a scrawl that read, "We forgive you. You'll always be our daughter." I burned it unopened. Later that week, I told Nathan the full story. Every word. Every glare. Every request. Every cruelty. I told him what I'd said to Haley in that hospital room. He didn't flinch. He just took my face in his hands and said, "Good." A few days after that, I found our oldest, 6 years old now, all legs and noise, trying to cut out paper hearts with dull safety scissors. His little brother, 2 and sticky, had jammed a crayon into the dog's ear. It was chaos. It was joy. That night, I tucked them both in, kissed their foreheads, and stood in the doorway watching them sleep. Nathan came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I leaned my head back against him and whispered that this is what family looks like. Not blood, not names, just this. A home filled with laughter. A man who would stand between me and every storm. Children who didn't know the words manipulation, abandonment, or conditional love. And me, a woman reborn from the wreckage, no longer carrying the weight of people who had tried to bury her. I still go to therapy. Still have bad dreams sometimes. But I also have Saturday morning pancakes and muddy paw prints on the floor and a husband who looks at me like I hung the stars. Closure? I didn't find it in a hospital. I didn't find it in an apology. I found it in the tiny, perfect moments they'll never get to see. And that is enough.